Congressman Malinowski, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. You actually introduced in Congress last year a resolution going after QAnon. What happened to you after that?
Well, it was an early warning sign. I started getting death threats. And it wasn't just because I was going after QAnon. This is the interesting part. It was because of an ad that the Republican National Congressional Committee spent over $1 million running against me in my race in New Jersey. That was basically playing to the QAnon messaging, the fear of this, sex trafficking cabal in the government, which they amazingly found some crazy way to link me and other candidates around the country to. QAnon then picked up on that, and I started getting death threats. So this was an example of the Republicans' political arm feeding the beast that is now coming after them, because actually it's my Republican colleagues who are getting most of the death threats today.
So, I mean, that is the, evidentiary-wise kind of the smoking gun in this discussion about to what extent is QAnon part of the Republican Party? And what you're telling us is the Republican Party, the Washington Republican Party, put out campaign ads against Democratic members of the House like you, using QAnon messaging specifically in the ads in order to turn out their vote. And, if that happened to lead to death threats for you, well, that's just part of doing business as a Republican now.
Yeah, well, I actually confronted Congressman Tom Emmer, who's the head of the NRCC, on the House floor after this happened. And he said, it's not my business what people do with our ads. So they washed their hands of it. And but again, it's now coming after them because, as you pointed out, that mob, they were as angry, if not more, at the people they consider to be Republican traitors who voted to certify this election as they are at me or any other Democrat.
Congressman Jimmy Gomez has introduced a resolution to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene from the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy has said he will have a private conversation with her. What should be happening in this situation?
So we're gonna have two at least censure resolutions next week. I'm leading one of them against Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, who was a Republican congressman who addressed the mob before they laid siege to the Capitol and told them that today is the day when American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass. And we can do it on the way to the Capitol building. So we're going to do that. And then, yes, there will be motions to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene. And what's going to happen? Well, I think my resolution will pass fairly easily. As for expulsion, that's up to the Republicans, right? Because it takes 2/3. They're going to have to tell us who they are, what kind of party they are. And, I hear a lot from my Republican colleagues about it's time to move on, don't live in the past. We got to unify. But, again, I think you pointed this out a few minutes ago. They're not unifying and moving on when it comes to Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger. They're not unifying and moving on when it comes to resolutions condemning Cindy McCain. And primary challenges against every single Republican who's had the integrity to do the right thing. So, their message is, when it comes to an attack on our democracy, we forget about that. When it comes to Liz Cheney and people defending our democracy, they get canceled. So they're going to have to figure out this stuff. I can't figure it out for them, but they'll have a chance.
Congressman Tom Malinowski, we will be watching them face that chance next week on the House floor when you bring up that censure resolution and when the expulsion resolution comes up. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.